Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is Lap Guide for Autopolis with the Renault Megane trophy. Let's get this started. Quick note, due to this car's low top speed, you can brake a lot later compared to other Group 4 cars, and you'll see what I mean starting now. You can start to brake just after you pass the 100 meter board, and I'm going to show exactly where I start to brake, which is right here. Brake hard for a short while, and slowly ease off of the brakes as you turn in. Once you hit the apex, you want to get on the throttle as soon as you can. And just take advantage of this car's agility, as this car really loves to rotate around the turns. Your next braking point, before you reach the 50 meter board, brake hard for a short moment and quickly ease off of the brakes as you turn in. Nice and easy on the throttle, do lots of throttle control as you go through these turns. Straighten up the car and brake before the curb on the right ends. Brake hard for a short moment, ease off of the brakes as you turn in, get as close as you can to the curbs without actually making contact with them, and carefully accelerate your way out. Then use the middle of the curb on the right as your turn-in point, and you just want to ease off of the throttle for this turn, do a little bit of throttle control, bring yourself towards the apex, and start to fully accelerate before you reach the Marshall stand that is on the other side of the track. If you get a good exit here, you can gain quite a bit of time. Now stay on the right side of the track, look for the 50 meter board, and brake before you pass it. Brake hard for a short moment and slowly ease off the brakes as you turn in. Nice and careful on the throttle, as this part can really unsettle the car. Now bring yourself to the left side of the track. Do be a little careful here, as you don't want to go wide. So brake before you reach the 50 meter board, use most of your braking power for a short moment, slowly ease off of the brakes. Then as the curb on the left ends, you want to use just a tiny bit of braking, just fine tune the car, bring it into the curbs, do some throttle control through this right and left turns. Then just before the right turn starts, you want to use most of your braking power for a very short moment, and then ease off of the brakes to meet up with both of the apexes. Lots of throttle control here, and you can start to accelerate when you're pointing towards this bridge. Just make sure you're aligned with both of the apexes, and then you want to do some throttle control, turn in before the curb on the right end. Once again, lots of throttle control, try to bring yourself towards the left side of the track. And just as the curb on the left ends, you want to use a little bit of braking. Just bring yourself towards the inside of the turn. And for those who have been following this channel for a while, you know where to start to accelerate. Once your car is pointing towards that tent, you can start to fully accelerate and you are good to go. But that is all for the lap guide. Let's go ahead and take a look at the strategies. For this race, we are doing 10 laps at Autopolis with the Group 4 cars. We are given the Racing Soft and Medium tires, and both the Racing Soft and Medium tires are required for this race, so you want to use both tire compounds so you do not get a 1 minute penalty after the race ends. Autopolis is considered a handling track, so you want to use a car that is suited for these kinds of tracks. So cars like the Alfa Romeo 4C, the Renault Megane Trophy, the Subaru WRX, those are just a couple of the cars that love handling tracks. They are basically built for those kinds of tracks, so they'll come into play here. So the fuel is a ×3, which means that you don't have to worry about refueling. So you can burn up all the fuel before the race starts and rev the heck out of the car, unless if your car needs to shift a little earlier. The tire wear is a ×6, which means that tire wear is going to be a pretty big issue. How long your Racing Soft tires will last will depend on the car that you're using and your own driving style. So for example, I'm using the Renault Megane Trophy. This car is light, so it's going to be gentle on the tires. And with my own driving style, I'm trying not to be too harsh on this car, especially as we go through the turns, and have the brake balance at 2 to the rear or +2 to try to ease off some of the stress from the front tires. And because Autopolis has a lot of turns, it's a pretty technical track, your front tires will often be the ones that will be wearing out faster here. But anyways, so I'm trying to be as gentle as I can with the tires, just trying to have a decent pace, and I'm going to end up having the racing soft tires last 7 laps. So it's definitely possible to make the racing soft tires last that long. So in this race, I went 7 laps on the racing soft tires and then 3 laps on the racing medium tires. And we'll skip on over towards the end of lap 7, so this is going to be my end lap, and you can see how the front tires are wearing out pretty fast because once again this track has a lot of turns, it's pretty technical, so the front tires are going to be stressed out quite a bit. And in a moment I'll show the pit stop sequence, but do be careful on your pit entry because you do have to slow down a little early. So this is like the one at Mount Panorama where you have to brake as the pit lane starts and then go through a little chicane and then you enter the pit stop sequence. So take your time choosing your tires so you don't choose the wrong tires and end up getting yourself a 1-minute penalty, or just go through the pit stop again and lose another 21 seconds because 21 seconds is your pit loss time. So for those thinking about doing a 2-stop, don't, because you're going to end up losing another 21 seconds and you're going to end up looking a little silly. And for those who are on the main straight, if there's a car in front of you that is coming out of the pit stop, please give them space. And at the end of the day, when it comes to your pit strategy, you basically want to find out how long you can make your racing soft tires last, because that's pretty much your strategy right there. Make your racing soft tires last as long as possible, and then once they're done, once they're worn out, switch on over to the racing medium tires and finish the race. So let's say that you can only make the racing soft tires last 5 laps and you're starting towards the front, so you do 5 laps on the racing soft tires, pit at the end of lap 5, and then you do your next 5 laps on the racing medium tires. If you're starting towards the back, you flip the strategy around. So you're starting on the racing medium tires this time, do 5 laps on the racing medium tires, and then at the end of lap 5, switch on over to the racing soft tires. And I do want to quickly talk about the cars I use, because I use 2 cars, the Renault Megane Trophy and the Subaru WRX. So the Megane Trophy, this car, and Autopolis, this is pretty much a match made in heaven. So the Megane Trophy, it loves going through the turns, it's very agile, so it's going to have a field day here at Autopolis. And the other really cool thing about the Megane Trophy is that it is really light on the tires, so it is possible to make the racing soft tires last 7 laps. And you saw that earlier in the clip. I was able to make the racing soft tires last 7 laps on this car. As long as you adjust the brake balance accordingly and drive smoothly, then this car will easily make the racing soft tires last a long time. But this car does also have a couple downsides, and the first one is that this car has 0 top speed. So if there's a car hanging out behind you as you're going down the main straight, then there's going to be a possible chance that you might get overtaken because they're just going to go faster than you, especially due to the slipstream. And the other downside to this car, this one's a bit more dependent depending on how your driving style is and what you like to drive. This car does get a little squirmy at times, and you might notice that as you go through the hairpins, especially the one that is coming up soon. If you get a little too aggressive out of the hairpins, this car will start to step out and you will have to do some counter steering to try to bring the car back to your control. So as long as you're nice and easy on the throttle as you're making your way out of the hairpins, then this car should not have any negative reactions. Do I step out over here? No. So yeah, so nice and easy on the throttle and this car won't try to bite your head off. And next up is the Subaru WRX. So this is another handling car. This car does do a pretty good job going through the turns here at Autopolis, and it's going to have a couple of advantages and disadvantages over the Megane Trophy. And one of the advantages is that this car is pretty stable and is forgiving to drive. So you don't really have to worry about spinning out coming out of the hairpin, because this car will make sure that you don't do that. As long as you don't clip the grass, this car, it won't spin out on you, especially because this car is an all-wheel drive. And this car does have a bit more speed than the Megane Trophy, so it is possible to easily overtake one, especially if you're under their slipstream. Now, when it comes to the downsides, this car, once again, it's going to be dependent on how your driving style is, and I'll talk about the -5 brake balance in a bit. One of the downsides to this car is that it is pretty understeery. So for example, with me, I'm not too big of a fan of understeery cars, so cars like the Subaru WRX, this car is going to be a bit of a hassle for me to drive because I like my cars to step out a bit, and this one, it just won't step out. And you're going to see that downside come into play as I'm going to end up understeering onto the grass because once again, this car is pretty understeery. So if you're too aggressive on the throttle, this car will understeer, especially if the front tires are worn out. And that's going to bring up one of the other downsides of this car, and it's that the front tires wear out really fast, and it doesn't matter whether you have the brake balance at -5 or +5, your front tires are going to wear out fast. And that is because, once again, this car is an all-wheel drive and this car is front heavy because most of the weight of the car is towards the front of the car. So for those who are not good with tire saving, your racing soft tires may last as little as 4 laps. And now comes the really weird thing with this car and the brake balance. So if you saw earlier, I'm running this race with a -5 brake balance, so the brake balance is all the way towards the front of the car. Normally you would have it at 5 to the rear or all the way to the rear of the car, but I'm trying out -5 and it surprisingly somehow works. So with the brake balance all the way towards the front of the car, the Subaru is going to be able to brake later and brake a lot faster, and it's going to be able to bite into the turns a lot better than having the brake balance towards the rear of the car. However, this does bring a couple issues of its own, so if you're too harsh on the brakes and you're trying to turn in, the car will start to have some nasty understeer, which means that you will be wearing out your front tires even more, and you do risk going off track. So if you're using the Subaru WRX and you don't know which brake balance to use, you can use -5, but do it at your own risk. I would rather suggest using 0 or a bit more towards the rear of the car. And do be aware that if you bring the brake balance towards the rear of the car, you will need to brake a little earlier because the rear brakes are the ones doing more of the work. But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about places to overtake and the penalty serving zone. So the main straight is probably the best place to get the overtake done, especially with the use of the slipstream. Our friend Standucci hanging out behind us, he's going to go for the overtake not here, but after this next turn. So I do have to go slower through here because I was off track not too long ago, so I went through that turn slower, which allows Standucci to pass us without an issue. And yeah, this place is a great place to get an overtake done. Now for a while it's going to be a single file line, and this hairpin, most of the time someone's going to be going into the inside line, so you're not going to be able to get an overtake done. Don't try to do an outside overtake because most of the time it's not going to work. And we're going to skip on over to a couple laps later because this is going to be the next best and probably the last place to get an overtake done here at Autopolis. And it's going to be this hairpin right here. You're going to see me go for a send, and I somehow got it to work. I actually didn't expect that to work, but it somehow did. After that, it's mostly going to be a single file line. I don't suggest going for an overtake here at this turn because this one is a pretty dangerous place to go for an overtake. You risk having an incident happen if you accidentally push the other car off track. And you might notice this in your races here at Autopolis. It's really hard to get an overtake done. It's really easy for the car that you want to overtake to defend a position. So you're going to see Standucci do that right now. He's going to defend his spot, go for the inside line. I'm going to go for an outside line, but it's just not going to work. And Standucci is going to keep the first place position. And yeah, this part, you can't really get an overtake done. So I'm pretty much forced to sit behind him and hope that he messes up, in which he doesn't. But anyways, the penalty serving zone, you might have missed it, you might have not. It's just after the second hairpin at the top of the hill, so if you have a penalty that you need to serve, you'll be serving it right here. But anyways, that is pretty much it for the guide. Hopefully it helps you out, and if it does, you can press the like button, subscribe, and all that good stuff. I do have a Patreon and the YouTube memberships, which you can check out in the description down below. And my team's Discord is also in the description down below in case you want to join and hang out with me. And that's all from me. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. So this is Mr. CA wishing you a good race, and I'll see you in the next video.